Welcome to our November board meeting. We're going to call the meeting to order, and thank you all for coming out on Veterans Day. I feel like a flag. I've been at a couple of veterans programs. I love this day. When we say the pledge and we finish, if you're a veteran, or if you're a spouse of a veteran or a child of a veteran, would you just remain standing for a minute? Because I have a feeling there's a lot of people that are connected with veterans. Not that you don't get a prize, but after the pledge, just don't sit down right away. I just want to see. So let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So where's our veterans and connected to veterans? Yeah. If your parent was a veteran, or if your spouse, you guys, what is it? We serve, we're also, well, thank you all. Okay, after all of that, we're ready for our superintendent's comments. Dr. Seifert.
Thank you. Welcome to tonight's Board of Education meeting. We are glad you are here. I walked in and said hello, and we're starting to see 3 or 4 people who are joining us on a regular basis. I look forward to seeing you. It's always great to have people in person, and we're glad you're with us tonight. And if you're joining at home, we're glad you're with us as well. I'd like to echo Director Towers' sentiments on Veterans Day. I'd like to say Happy Veterans Day to all our veterans. Thank you to all who have served and are serving our great nation. We are forever indebted to your unconditional pledge and fight for our freedom. And I tell you, today I was able to get out to a lot of our buildings, and we had drive-through parades. Harris had one today. A couple of schools did. We had a couple in-person assemblies, and just a great opportunity for our veterans to come into our schools or drive through the parking lot and just be able to get a honk or a wave or a thank you for their service. So veterans, thank you so much. Since our last meeting in October, we had parent-teacher conferences and PD days for the staff. Both events were a great success. Thank you, parents and guardians, for continuing to partner with us in your child's educational journey, and we truly believe in every student together. And it was great to have our conferences and the PD day. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the meeting, but really just a great day for us as a staff to get together and learn and grow together. Also, since our last meeting, unfortunately, we had 3 different situations occur at 3 different schools in our district that were highly concerning. At Hardin, we had a thread of emails containing threats and hate speech and material. At SCHS, we had 2 bullets were found in the hallway. And at St. Charles West, we had graffiti found in a girls' restroom that included threatening language. All 3 cases have been reported to the police, and investigations are still active. We will always keep the safety of our students and staff as our number 1 priority as we stand and collectively against any threatening behavior towards or in our schools. The SCSD is a great safe place for our students and staff to learn and grow together, and we are focused daily to keep it that way. As always, we will keep the involved staff and families updated if and when we have information we can share. And I just thank you to all of our community members. Thank you for your continued support and trust. Fall sports and activity seasons have come to an end, but we have some congratulations to give out. Our St. Charles West girls and boys cross-country teams, girls took 2nd place. You can clap for that. Boys took 7th place. We had Lily Jackson, 2nd place overall individually. Jenna Wacker took 6th place. And we had James Wortham on the boys' side, 3rd place. And Jacob Blessingame came up with 7th place. So way to go to those students. You can clap again. St. Charles High also sent some cross-country runners, and they did a great job as well. But I will point out St. Charles High has a 2nd-team All-State softball player, Brighton Kendrick. And then we also have an All-American football player, Marquise Graciel. So we can clap for them as well. Believe it or not, winter sports is here. We do have a board member who probably would like to talk more wrestling than basketball, but we do have some awesome wrestling teams and swimming teams as well. But the turkey tip-off that a lot of us look forward to We hope that goes off without a hitch this year, in person. Looking forward to that, and it's always a great time, the Tuesday before Thanksgiving break. We just celebrated last night our outstanding academic seniors last night from both high schools. It was a fun night to get together in the same space and honor the work the seniors have done thus far in their high school career, carrying a 3.5 grade point average or higher through their first 3 years of high school. Congratulations to our seniors. Let's finish strong. And it was just a really good night last night to celebrate them with their parents. We hope to have a new podcast episode out soon, so stay tuned for that. I know that's probably a highlight for all of you. That wasn't supposed to be funny, but thank you for the strong response on the right. We've worked hard to prepare for this meeting tonight, and I know you're all here probably for COVID, but we got a good COVID update for you. We're going to have a good discussion on our PD days. We have a bond project to discuss, a proposed calendar revision, and also the district financial report. As always, I want to encourage everyone to keep going strong. Let's continue working together and continue to make 21-22 our best year yet. Together we can and will reach and teach and empower all of our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item 3.04, board communication. Ellen, do we have any? Not at this time. Okay. Item 3.05 is our public recognition, and tonight we're recognizing Harris and our special ed department. I don't know which one is going first.
Mr. Tyson Plumley is going to come up and make some comments about the Harris Special Education Department.
Do I what?
The disclaimer.
Oh,
We do for this part.
yeah, we do.
Yeah, thank you. I'll read it.
Do you have it?
I got it.
Oh, please.
Hang on.
Please.
Yeah.
As many of you know, the open session of our board meeting is televised. The next portion of our open meeting will consist of public recognition. Through participation in the public recognition portion of our meeting, all parties give consent to the televised broadcast of information and images, as well as other district-related media. If you prefer not to participate, you have that option. One, two, three, go.
Mr. Plumley, thanks again for your service as well. Happy Veterans Day.
Board members and families that have come and also employees, thank you for having us. I think that it's important that in this time that with all the shortages going around in the world around us, we aim to find ways to be consistent with our kids. And at Harris, we have 2 autism classrooms. Both classrooms have students with very specific needs. Some of them have limited communication abilities, and some of them have higher abilities where they can push out more with adult support and paraprofessional support. But when I thought about bringing the people at Harris to recognize them tonight, I really thought about our paraprofessionals because they've been the most consistent for our kids with high needs the entire year, and they've been flexible all around. They've had to fill gaps in students' days, and one thing that stays the same is they show up every day, no matter how difficult it is, no matter how hard the behaviors are, and some students can be pretty physical, some students have needs, some students have devices that may not be working or be faulty and they're off for repair, but one thing's for sure is every single day our paraprofessionals come ready to greet and meet the kids at the door meet them where they're at and work hand in hand with both of their teachers. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for coming to Harris every day with a smile on your face and being there for the kids, because one thing that's hard to replace is someone who wants to be there working with these kids every day, and they rely on you. They rely on seeing you every day, the systems and routines and procedures that are put in place, and our paraprofessionals adapt to schedule changes. We might get a new kid in from somewhere. We might have a new staff member come in that's been hired, and so, but they embrace them and they bring them on board, and that's how we say the nest is the best. So I just wanted to recognize our paraprofessionals this month. So thank you very much for all that you do each day, and for coming in and continuing to stay the course and work with our kids. So when I read your name, just come up and we'll get you lined up here, I guess. So we have Aaron Frisbee. Come on up. We have Jacqueline Cleese. Nope. Jacqueline Cleese is not here. But if she's watching, come on down. We have Carrie Maja Troop. Come on up. We have Laura Schnettler. We have Melissa Spilker. And we have Jackie Weinecke. She's not here. No. Yeah. And another person we have is Molly Schulte-Henrich, but she cannot be here this evening, so we want to recognize her.
Yeah.
So. And lastly, really, the students could not be successful without your guidance each day. And I know some days the days are really tough, and the students can be tough, and the shortages are tough. But just with you being there every day, for me, it helps us, it helps the kids. And like I said, the kids are most important, and you show up each day for that. So for me, I'm grateful, so thank you very much.
All right, 1, 2, 3. Thank you, ladies. Congratulations.
Thank you. Item 3.06, this is our audience comment section. You want to read that? Ms. Flynn?
Sure.
You're going to be doing a lot of reading.
All regular and special meetings of the board shall be open to the public. Since the board desires to be a good listener and be responsive to the community, persons desiring to address the board may do so during the time so allotted on the agenda and according to established procedures. During the audience portion of each board meeting, patrons are invited by the president to speak for or against any proposal on the tentative agenda or on any other school concern. The individual is asked to identify him or herself, limit comments to a few minutes, and avoid discussing personalities. The president reserves the right to limit the number of presentations and/or the length of comments. At the discretion of the president, patrons may be recognized at other times during the board meeting. The board is very interested in audience comments. According to board policy, members cannot respond during the actual meeting. The board will listen to and research all audience comments. If necessary, additional follow-up will occur through district administrators. Shall I just go in, or do you want to make a comment?
No, I think we're going to go. We have some patrons who emailed their comments, and so Dr. Malone's going to read those.
So the first one is from Kimberly Siemens, mother to a second grader at Lincoln Elementary and fifth grader at Jefferson Intermediate. Dear St. Charles School District Board members, thank you for your actions in protection of our children this school year. I have been so thankful for your thoughtful planning and discussion through this year in regards to keeping our children safe, healthy, and in school. COVID vaccinations for 5-year-olds through 11-year-olds became available last week. My children received their first dose last Friday. They must wait 21 days for their second dose. Then an additional 15 days after their second dose, they will be considered fully vaccinated. Please allow us this time to get the young children fully vaccinated before moving to change the current masking policy. As you prepare to discuss and vote on changes to the masking policy, please keep in mind that our 5 through 11-year-olds have not had the opportunity to get fully vaccinated. Those of us that are passionate about vaccinations are taking action. However, We still need your protection until we get to the finish line. Thank you for all you do to support our schools. Sincerely. Then we have a letter from Amy Leatherberry. Dear Board of Education, I would like to start by expressing my gratitude and appreciation to the board and district administration for their strategic and balanced approach to COVID mitigation strategies this year. Our testing, contract tracing, and masking policies have led to the best student outcomes in the St. Charles area. Moving to optional masking for grades 9 through 12 was a cautious and necessary step to the off-ramps we might begin to use in the pandemic as numbers improve. However, I want to point out one critical difference between that decision and the one that you will discuss tonight. High school students had the opportunity to be fully vaccinated before they were optionally masked. This is an important distinction that I urge you to consider. Even as a motivated mom able to get her children a shot on the very first day that they were available, my boys will not be eligible to receive their second dose until Saturday, November 27th. They will be considered fully vaccinated as defined by the CDC and APA 14 days from then on December 11th. For my family and for other busy working class families like mine still trying to get their kids appointments this week, I ask that you consider extending mandatory masking for grades K through 6 until at least the next board meeting. Please forward my young children the same protection given to high school students by allowing them to be fully vaxxed before they are optionally masked. Sincerely. So this came from Michelle Kamek. Can the board please wait for all students to have the chance to get fully vaccinated before shifting to a mask optional protocol? The earliest a child would be fully protected would be mid-December. We have masked this long. Why not wait for the last safety measure for parents who want to get their children vaccinated? Thank you. And then this one, and my last one, Heather Hayes. To the St. Charles School District Board and Administration, I am a parent of 2 students at Lincoln and 1 student at ECC. I first want to thank you for all the difficult choices you've made to keep our children safe this year, and thank the teachers and staff for everything they do for our kids. My kids did the virtual option last year, and although their teachers were amazing and we could not have hoped for more during the last school year, they are happy to be back in person this year. We were comfortable sending them back to school this year because of the mask requirement you voted on and have kept in place for younger students this school year. My 4th and 2nd graders received their first Pfizer vaccine last weekend. The first weekend vaccines were available to children 5 through 11. They now must wait 3 weeks for their second, and even then will not be considered fully vaccinated for another 2 weeks after that. The earliest any of your students aged 5 through 11 can be considered fully vaccinated is mid-December. It is too soon to start thinking about lifting the mask mandate for these students, especially with the upcoming holidays and gatherings that are likely in the next 2 months. I ask you to continue the mask requirement for at least the elementary and intermediate students. To those who would argue mask infringes on their freedom or liberty, even my young children recognize that freedom, quote unquote, does not mean doing anything you want without regard for others. We daily agree to follow rules and laws that restrict our choices, but keep ourselves and others safe. We comply with speed limits and do not drive 60 miles an hour on residential roads. And we drive even slower when school is in session and children are around. We use car seats as required by law to keep our children safe in the car. We impose restrictions on when children can begin driving. Freedom is not about having no restrictions or interference from the government. It is about being protected from arbitrary restrictions, those that exist for no reason and yield no societal benefit. Requiring masks does not fall in this category. It has a clear purpose and societal benefit, well accepted by the scientific community, of mitigating the spread of COVID-19. We can easily compare our district numbers to those of districts without mask requirements to see that masking works to keep our students safe and in school. Due to the circulating and highly contagious Delta variant, the CDC continues to recommend universal indoor masking by all students, age 2 and older, staff, teachers, and visitors to K through 12 schools, regardless of vaccination status. Please continue keeping our children safe. Please continue requiring masks in school. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and we have 4 audience participation cards. The first one is Ellie Gibbs. I couldn't hear you.
Hello, my name is Ellie Gibbs, and I'm a sophomore at St. Charles High School. I'm here to speak about the current mask policy within our district. Within the past month, COVID cases have been getting worse throughout the high schools. Fortunately, these increases have not been dramatic. However, I feel it will get worse during the upcoming cold and flu season if we continue to have an optional mandate. A week after the mandate was lifted, we had 5 COVID cases in one day at St. Charles High School. A week after the mandate was lifted, our theater teacher pulled us out of the thespian conference for fear of us being quarantined by the time it rolls around in January. Also within the last month, we were unable to have our district football game because too many football players were quarantined. As president of the sophomore class, I have the best interests of my peers and school at heart. I speak on behalf of the immunocompromised students, the students with elderly people in their lives, the students with babies in their lives, and the students who are just scared of getting this deadly virus. I understand you will not require a vaccine. However, the majority of the student body remains unvaccinated. I know the masks are annoying, and I don't necessarily want to wear one. However, it is needed until the majority of the student body is vaccinated. My life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness depends on the safety of others. This mandate does not just affect the students, but also their friends, families, teachers, and their teachers' families, as well as anyone else in their lives. I believe that we will get through this if we go through it together. It is not an individual fight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. Our next card is from Nathan Hodge.
I find it a little odd, last meeting, there was not a single person other than that guy there that was speaking out pro-mask, and then every single one of your emails this week happens to be pro-mask. You can't tell me that was not cherry-picked information. Last week, you went as far as wanting to arrest a grandfather for not wearing a mask while you sat there with a mask off for half the meeting yourself. That's absurdity. Masking children so that adults feel safe is child abuse. It needs to be in the hands of the parents. If the parents want the kid to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you don't, don't. If you want a shot, get a shot. If you don't, don't. That's the only person that ought to be making any decisions for their children whatsoever. Not a bunch of non-doctors or anyone like that. That's it.
Thank you, Nathan. Our next speaker is Brendan Kearns.
Good evening, members of the Cabinet and Board of Education. My name is Brendan Kearns, the president of SCEA. As this meeting falls on Veterans Day, I'd like to begin by thanking all the veterans both on our staff and in our community for their service to our country. Your service has helped us keep the freedoms we enjoy every day. I would also like to point out that next week is American Education Week. On this week, we celebrate all the people who help students succeed. As we approach Thanksgiving, our members are putting in an extraordinary effort to make sure our kids are all achieving their best. The challenges of having everyone back in person are formidable, and our teachers are feeling the pressure. We are pleased to hear the proposal to add days to the winter break and believe that this will help us to recuperate during what has been a challenging year. Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan. The last card is Caleb Mertz.
Hello, good evening. I'm Caleb Mertz, as I'm sure all of you know, and I'm a junior at St. Charles High School. Now, I want to begin by thanking each and every one of you for lifting the mask mandate in the high schools. I know that I have been able to learn better and communicate better with my peers, and in turn, I've been able to be a better student overall. And it's actually starting to feel like a normal year again, which I know all of us want that. And so thank you for being proactive by putting my and my fellow students' education at the front of your minds. Now, I know personally that I've benefited a lot from the lifting of mask mandates. And I can only begin to imagine how much the other students in our other schools will benefit from a mask mandate being lifted. I can imagine how a kindergartner would feel being able to actually see their teacher's lips move and then realizing, oh, that's how you say that word, or that's how you say this word. Now, I can actually imagine what it's like for someone at Jefferson to finally see the faces of their classmates that they haven't seen before because they came from different schools. I know that was one of the biggest things when I was in Jefferson. And I can imagine the middle schoolers at Hardin discovering like who they are as a person and like what they want to be like for the rest of their lives and who they want to hang out with just because they can see their friends' faces and, really develop that personal connection with them. So thank you for lifting the mask mandates in the high schools, and I just ask that you lift them for the middle schools and elementary schools as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Caleb. Thank you all. We have concluded all of our audience comments, and before we go on to the business portion of our meeting, which is riveting, we're going to take just a couple of minutes for those of you who'd like to exit the meeting, or if you have other plans that you need to attend to, go ahead and take care of that now. Okay. All right, we're moving on to item 3.07. Can I have a motion to amend or adopt the agenda? I move we adopt the agenda. Do I have a second? Lori? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, so our agenda is adopted. Item 4.01, the consent agenda. For efficiency, the school board utilizes a consent agenda. Items placed on the consent agenda are routine in nature or are among the many decisions that the board has already determined are in the domain of the administration. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? I make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Rolling along. Under old business, item 6.01, we're going to be talking about our COVID update. Dr. Seifert.
Thank you, Dr. Towers. As usual, we have a quick PowerPoint to go through some things and some slides so we know clearly what we're talking about tonight. Just again, to reiterate our why, to keep students and staff safe and also to keep students and staff in school as normal as possible. Those are our two whys. Now, the next couple slides, Chris, if you kind of just scroll through that with me, but just a reminder of what our protocols look like, and a lot of this is original wording from this summer's task force, and we're pretty much going to get down to slide 7. Slide 7 basically tells you kind of, again, just to remind you of kind of what the quarantines out there now for mask to mask and just the normal procedures for being able to test early out to get back in a quarantine that we're using in our K through 8 buildings in terms of what the normal modified or regular quarantine looks like. Slide 8 and 9 are going to get into these new modified quarantines that we've been using, and I want to spend a little time with that, and we'll get back to the masking. The modified quarantine right now is if a student was masked when exposed during school, regardless if the positive case was masked or not, they will be placed in a modified quarantine, meaning they can continue to attend school. So this means that they can go into a modified quarantine if they had a mask on themselves. We've been using that. The issue with that is we're still losing kids that are getting exposed at times when it's either when they don't have a mask off, because some of our kids are still not vaccinated. So Misha, which is our sports association, as well as DHSS, which is the state health department, came up with test to stay and test to play. We have put that in now as well for the high school. And I can tell you that both have helped keep kids in school. But I do know that the test to stay, and we'll talk about some of this in just a second, more in detail, but the test to stay, especially the test to stay part, can be tedious and a little obviously extra work for our nurses, and that can be a challenge for our nurses. But I will tell you, test to play does save band members, thespians, athletes, you name it, to be able to stay. And quite honestly, and we'll talk about this a little, we had the lead, and Lordy, you'll know this for sure because you lived it last year, but we had the lead actor or actress in the play last year, and the Friday of the opening play was quarantined and had to, and we followed rules and missed the whole play, had no symptoms. This year, one of our top volleyball players at St. Charles High had to miss the district championship game because she was exposed. And it goes on. We had a band member the same way. Same thing happened. So test to play is something that I think really does help our kids that are trying to do activities and things after school. So we'll talk a little bit more to that. And we've been doing test to stay play for at least a week and a half now. And we'll talk more details about that. But I'm just kind of giving us an idea of where we're at right now. Now, if that doesn't confuse you at all, because I live this every day and it's still confusing to me, slide 9 talks about the newest modified quarantine. In our district, our health department, county health department, has basically has said now that they've gone to the modified, and it does not basically matter if you have a mask on or not. You can still come to school, but you are still in the modified, so you can't play sports, but you have to wear a mask for 14 days. Not the test part. The test to play came from the state. This is our local. We already have Wentzville using it, Orchard Farms using it, Howell is looking at it. I believe, I don't want to really talk about what other school districts are doing, but I believe Zumwalt probably will go to it eventually, but they are K through 12 optional, so they might stay the fact that you have to have a mask on to have the modification. We'll come back to this in just a second because we need to talk specific about what the quarantine looks like as we move forward, and I've got some other things to share with that. So that kind of gives you an idea of what we're doing quarantine-wise and what we can add if we need to. Now, saying that, obviously everybody knows that we've been 9th through 12th grade optional, and K through 8 we have been mandated for masks. And so if you look at slide 10, it shows you our numbers. And for the most part, if you look at the numbers, as we pull them off our dashboard, and they're pretty good. It's pretty typical right now where we have 14 active cases, student cases, which out of almost 4,900 kids, that's pretty good. Now saying that, and we heard one of our students said, when we went last month, we decided to go optional. Very quickly, all of a sudden, we had 5 cases in one day at High. Since then, Julie helped me with some of the numbers. At St. Charles High, we just had another case at West today. I think they've had 2 cases since then, and High's had... versus 10, which is, and I think you have to talk about that. Now, is that coincidental? What we're seeing, I think, is each school seems to have their hot spot. It just seems like all of a sudden one school will go 3 or 4, bam, and so is it just that was the high school's turn? Or is it because of the optional? And if anybody listens to anything I have to say during these presentations each month, sometimes I don't know because we have more people that want to talk about it, but that's okay. We're balanced. I'm trying to give a balanced report of this is what I think, this is what we see, this is what we've been told we can use, and putting a best package together to make sure our kids are in the best possible learning environment, least restrictive. And again, masks are restrictive, we know that, but we also want to keep them safe. So we want to make sure you knew those numbers. We've seen a rise, especially at St. Charles High. I will also tell you this. We've had our test to stay go pretty well. So some kids, now not all the kids that get exposed, remember, and again, this is all work for our administrators. This is all extra work for our nurses. And so when you get a case now, we have to see if they've been vaccinated. If they've been vaccinated, then they're good. Remember, you have to remember that vaccination piece is very important. We've heard that in about 3 or 4 letters tonight. We'll come back to that as well. So we say if they're vaccinated or not. If they're vaccinated, they're good to go. Then we think, do they have a mask on or not? Then they can stay if they have a mask on. And then we look at test to stay and test to play. And test to stay, we have done several kids test to stay. And I will tell you, because we're not going to leave anything out, this week we've had our first positive test to stay. So we had a student who test to stay the first 2, because you have to basically test 3 times within that first 7 days. The first 2 times that person was negative, the third time they were positive. Now, then we have to then contact trace that situation as well. I think we got about 12 additional cases. Now, is that going to happen all the time? I don't know. But we did catch that. There's a lot of things that I don't think you're going to catch, and there's still a lot of things out there that we can't control. So I just wanted to throw that out. Anything you want to add to numbers-wise?
I will say, if we're talking about there was an increase of 17 kids in the high school, the same period of time, there was only, up until November 5th, there was only 1 new case at the elementary school. And since the last board meeting, there's been, let's see, like 18 cases? Yeah, 19 cases at the elementary school, too.
Thanks,
now,
Julie.
K through 6.
And then let's not forget, because our staff's important to us as well. We have 5 staff cases right now. We've only had 13 staff cases the whole school year, which is pretty good. So if we go to slide 12, again, stop me if you have questions. I'm just trying to get all the information out so we can have a discussion. I'm sorry, 11. Sorry, thank you. This is good news. So the transmission rate is at 0.83, and we've said anything below 1 is good. So this is pretty low. Also, we've really focused on the positivity rate. And last week, or the last month, we were kind of teetering on that 7 point, and kind of what does that look like for the high school. So right now in St. Charles County, the whole county is sitting right at almost 7%, and you can see the grid below that. And then you look at the city, where obviously we're in, and it's at 5.96. We're heading the right direction. That's pretty good, and it's holding steady there. That does not mean we're not seeing cases. Does not mean we're not seeing some cases pop up, or a couple schools having some hot spots. And we had that 4% rule in play as well. If we needed to stop the optional piece, we haven't even come close to that, even with the 5 or 6 cases we've had. So this is a positive note. This is something that we can say we see a good direction going with our numbers, county and city. Anything else you want to add to that? All right. So when it comes to a recommendation, I'm sorry, did you say something?
No, coughing.
Oh, okay. Then when we come to a recommendation, the next 2 slides, last time I had a specific question that basically said, what do we want to do with masking optional? And if you looked at the board docs earlier this week, I had on there, are we ready to go K through 12 optional? And as I talked to our board, my CO team, and I talked to just our central office team, and I talked to some of our principals, and we had a meeting with our union reps the other day as well, I felt like I needed to get a little bit more specific to what we're really talking about and really lead you guys through a discussion. And not so much that I have to say to you, go this direction, but I really want to give you a little bit more specific of an idea of what I think our overall game plan is here heading into the holiday season. Does that make sense? So I broke it down into masking, quarantine, and then on the next page, basically just thoughts. Okay, so thanks, Chris. Let's go back up to that. So masking. I think we're at this time, the two questions are, do we want to keep the optional masking at 9 through 12? And then also then, we broke it down K through 8, and K through 6 and 7th and 8th. And this actually says say keep masking at K through 8, not K through 12. I apologize, I should say K through 8, or go optional. So those are the two questions. Now, you've heard a couple letters tonight. I've had some conversations with people as well. And just keep in mind, and we'll get to some thoughts in just a second. Actually, you know what? Let's just throw those questions out. You guys think about those questions. Let me get to the thoughts in just a second. Hold on, Chris. Go back up. Yeah, thanks. So that's the masking. The two questions are, do we want to keep the optional masking 9 to 12? And do we want to keep the mandated masking for K through 8, basically? Or do we want to look at separate K through 6, 7th, and 8? Those are the questions. Quarantine. Here are the protocols. Protocols we are using and available to use. So we have the initial quarantine. So we have those in place. We have the modified 3 feet, 6 feet, testing out early. There's a modified piece if you're 3 feet. This is mask to mask. We still have all that going on at our elementary schools, our K through 8 buildings. Now we have a modified quarantine that says if you are masked, this is in our optional settings, if you are masked, you can still stay in school if you've been exposed at school, showing no symptoms, but you have to wear a mask for 14 days. No sports or activities. Now we've added test to stay, test to play, and again, I'll be flat out honest with you. We really like this option for our thespians, our band, our musicians, and our athletes. We really think that test to play can keep some kids in and keep them going in their activities. We didn't think we could just put test to play in without test to stay because we don't want anybody thinking, oh, we're just catering to one group of students. So we put test to stay in. Test to stay is in, test to play, and I think one specific issue we have with this is how much more work is this put on our nurses, and what does this look like, and is this very feasible for us to continue? Now, saying that, we do have an extra grant federal grant that we were used just for COVID and just for nurses, and we were able to hire an extra nurse tonight. We're hoping two, but right now one that can specifically help with testing, so that should be a help. I want you to know all the angles here. So my feeling going forward, and I'll just talk about my thoughts in just a second, but I think we could probably eliminate test to stay, keep test to play, and I'll tell you why in just a second. So the newest quarantine then, again, I'm just going over it again, it's not utilized yet, but our health department has agreed to it. The state level and the CDC have not agreed to, or this is not part of their quarantine, their protocols. But our county has said, yes, we're using it. I would say all 5 counties, districts in the county will go to it at some point. And it is, again, it does not matter if you're masked or not. If you're not showing symptoms, you can stay in school, and then the 14 days you wear a mask. Okay? And we're going to talk about that in just a second. So the next slide is the thoughts. So this is where we'll have a conversation. So the data, SCSD COVID numbers and county positivity rate. We've already told you about that. That's pretty positive. There's some good things coming out. Right now our numbers are getting lower, and we're not under that 5% mark yet, but we're in the transmission rate too is pretty good. Our numbers, obviously, we do have some cases, but for the most part, our numbers have stayed steady for the most part. Obviously, we've popped up at the high schools a little bit. We've discussed that. Numbers are good because, and again, the question is, are our numbers good because of our mitigation strategies in place? And then is that why we're still really good? And I tell you, I've seen our county executive, Steve Ellman, I see him probably, it seems like once or twice a week, it seems like at different meetings. And every time he says, I've been checking your numbers and you look pretty good, you look pretty good. So I know that collectively, And not that it's a race or a game with the other county schools, but we look pretty good with our numbers, and we look pretty healthy in terms of what we're doing. So that's the data. Testing-wise, I wanted to put on there that I think if we continue to do a test-to-stay type of program, I think it is increased work for our nurses, because they're doing a lot of testing. Remember, we're already doing a lot of testing to just test kids when they need to, and staff. And then I also said this, we did have our first test-to-stay play positive test this week. Test-to-play, again, does give our student thespians, musicians, and athletes, et cetera, an added layer of being protected from being quarantined and ineligible to participate. And we talked about those certain examples. I'm really serious when I say that I think we have to keep test-to-play if we want to have again, if we have symptoms, if we have a positive COVID case, that's another thing. But I'm just talking about in terms of in-school exposure. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard not to have a season without some type of, hey, we can't play a game or 2, 3 games because again, even at the K through 8 level, if they're exposed at lunch, they have to go out. Okay, we'll talk about that a little bit.
Jason, can I say one thing?
Can
I say one thing?
Sure.
And just when we're talking about this test to stay and test to play, it's only if they were exposed at school. So a kid still could not play or participate in MISHA activities if they were exposed in the home setting.
Yeah, and I keep saying in-school exposure,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
that's a
so
great point.
Just to like reiterate, and right now, I don't know if we've said this too, because of all the testing with the test to stay and test to play, we do have our athletic directors helping us and trained to test as well. And their
Because
secretaries.
We had about a 2-hour meeting when we were going to go to this with our 2 high school nurses were in the room, and we had a good conversation because we knew this was going to be more work on them. So our ADs were trained, and they're helping out with the testing as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julie, for those clarifications. Then the vaccines, we've heard those and how important those are. So we have partnered with the St. Charles County Health Department, and hopefully you all saw your emails that went out. It was very important that we got the specific information out to our families so they know exactly when those vaccines are, because a lot of those vaccine clinics are by appointment only. So there was one this last Wednesday. We all know the processes. It takes a while for those 2 shots. And again, vaccines are not mandated. They will not be mandated, but we certainly want to make sure the information is out there. And we've worked, and we applaud Sarah Evers as well as she's our acting health director, and their group for putting them on. And there's a lot of information out there that we sent home. So if a family chooses to get vaccinated, they have a lot of opportunities to do so. But it's going to take some time to get those vaccinations going. And then we're obviously ages 5 to 11, those are starting to occur, but it's going to take a little time to get that going as well. And then so the questions moving forward. Is it best to keep K-8 in masks while vaccine is being rolled out? And then the other piece is, let's look at the strategic piece of we're getting into the holiday season. We are a week and 2 days away, or a week and three days away from basically a 5-day weekend with Thanksgiving. Then we come back for 3 weeks, and I know we're going to talk about a little bit of revision in just a second. 3 weeks, and then we're off for 2 weeks. And so we all know what happens during holiday seasons. Everybody gets together, and we usually see a spike. So we need to think about that. We also need to think about, we'll have a December meeting that we can talk about some things. And then our January meeting, if you've looked that far, and I have, we actually have a Thursday board meeting. We come back like on a Tuesday, I believe it is. And so not that Thursday, but then the following week we have a meeting. So we'd have a pretty good idea. That's almost a full week to see what has occurred since kids have been out and all together. And I think we have a really, really good idea. So the question would be, because of that strategically, and again, we'll have to talk about it in December. I'm sure you all will want to come back because that was supposed to be funny. My feeling is that strategically, we probably don't want to make huge changes until January, but that's up to you all. So that's strategically, you have to think about that question. And then 9 through 12, can probably stay optional, but are we ready for the newest modified quarantine? That's what we have to discuss. Now, does the newest modified quarantine make the most sense for K through 12 so that even students exposed at lunch can stay at school without testing to stay? And then also K through 8 would still be masked up. And let's talk about that for just a second. I know one of the other superintendents in the county, I heard he made a comment of, we're still gonna keep the quarantine of you have to have a mask on, but they're K-12 optional. To me, I continue wanting to move forward, and I continue wanting to see if we can be progressive, but also balance it with mitigation. If we're K through 8 masked up for another month, does it make sense? And we have to be careful, because if you want to go to test to stay for K-12, we're going to start seeing a lot of tests. And I don't know if we can keep up with that with our nurses. We're going to try, and we've got help. And so, to me, if you went to the newest modification, what would that do for you? That would keep your high school kids in. We would monitor them. They would wear 14. We would get away from test to stay. We would have test to play still for the kids that had activities. We would monitor those kids, have masks on them for 14 days. I've talked to the high school principals. They said they're going to come up with a Google form and some things to really make sure those kids are in masks. And then what happens at your elementary level then is, we've got, and you'll see it on the numbers, we have like 8 kids in Coverdale out right now. We're mask to mask, we still have 8 kids out. Well, it's because they're exposed at lunch. So what this new modification would do is be able to keep those kids in, and all they have to do is wear a mask. Well, guess what? They wear a mask anyway. And what this would do is, I believe this modification is not going anywhere. I know some people don't like the fact that the state level and the CDC didn't come up with it. It seems like our county is going rogue a little bit. I understand that. Let's put that out there. But I think this is the quarantine modification that we're all going to go to. It's going to happen. Because right now, what is our why? Keep kids in school. Well, let's face it. We're getting so many modified quarantines, I can't even keep them straight. And we're getting to a point now where keeping kids masked up just to keep them in school is, they're handing it to us. They're just handing it to us. So I think we could stay masked up K through 8 through the holidays, stay with our 9 through 12 optional. Again, the thought is, how do we get masks off kids? I get it. That's where our thought is. But let's go progressive with the quarantine. Let's see if it works, and see if we might, we got to test to stay positive today. We might start seeing more positives, then we'll have to pull it back. And that allows our K through 12, even if you're exposed at lunch, you get to stay in school and see how that goes. And so the last piece then is, early childhood would continue their individualized protocol plan. But again, at some point, does the newest modified quarantine benefit them as well? Because if you see the numbers, they've got 22 kids out right now. Now, I don't think we're ready to do anything with our pre-Ks at this point, but at some point we'll come back to them as well. So what does all this mean? I think we want to continue to have a balanced approach. We've heard both sides of the story again tonight. Great, compelling conversations on both sides. Had two great students talk. Obviously, both opposite. I mean, we're just not going to make everybody happy. Our goal and our job is to keep kids safe, keep them in school, and these modifications keep rolling to us that it's not necessarily going to be, we have to keep kids masked up to keep them in school. But I also understand, here comes holidays. There's a lot of, and I've heard from quite a few of our teachers, and again, I understand that's an adult issue, maybe that I've heard that too, but that they would like to see us get through the holiday season and see where we're at. So again, what do you want to do mask-wise? 9 through 12, K through 6, 7 and 8, and then quarantine-wise, do you want to go to the newest and take away the test to stay, but keep test to play is kind of where I'm at with things. Now, questions, discussion. First of all, central office team, anything else you want to add to that? Anything I forgot or said wrong or different? Or? All right, that was a lot, sorry. But I'm trying to be very clear and precise of where we're at with things because it gets very nitty-gritty.
On a whole different level, we have set the threshold at 4%. And I think, Danielle, you calculated that was 32 students. Yeah. Well, if we have 32 students all at once testing with COVID, we're in the midst of a major outbreak. And so maybe we should consider lowering the threshold. Well, 2% would be 16. Maybe 3% would be,
I think neighboring districts have a lower threshold.
And to that point
24,
then, yeah.
24,
that
yeah.
point. And I'm not opposed to that. You just have to watch some of our very small schools.
Well,
Good.
but so far, the high schools are the only ones that are mask optional, so.
You're right.
You know.
But I also think when you look at a threshold, that could still be for your quarantine as well. It could, if you
yeah.
wanted to. It doesn't have to be, right now it's a threshold
No.
for masking, but it could be for the quarantine as
Yeah,
well.
threshold for, I called it a kill switch. The mask mandate would go back in place
Yes.
if we reached a threshold of 4%. But on further reflection, I think it is too high.
Yeah. So we can have that conversation as
Yeah.
well.
Well, can I say something?
Sure.
And I think it depends too on if you're looking at like, say it's 12, 15, 20 kids. Is it because it's been a holiday and they were all exposed at home? Or are these school exposures? And I do track that. Every time we have on the dashboard, like how many are from home exposure, how many are from school exposure? And I will tell you that like almost majority of, I didn't look at the number exactly, majority of our cases come from exposure at home. Like they don't typically come from exposure to school. So I think that's something to consider if we're looking at a number or a threshold. Is it one class or is it spread throughout the building, or are they all like coming back from Christmas, they haven't walked into our building yet, and there's 15 kids that are COVID positive
Well,
who
but
haven't even.
that would indicate that community spread has gone up, and masks might help that situation,
And wouldn't your point, Julie, also support what Ellen is saying, that for
Yeah.
those unique times, that the numbers might shoot up?
I
Well,
guess my whole point is like a certain percentage may not tell the whole story.
That's true.
So it could mean, yes, it's a horrible thing, or you could have 2% and it could be a horrible thing, or you could have, it just depends if the kids have been in school, if the kids have been exposed. Because when we look at the numbers since the last board meeting, and St. Charles High has a lot more cases since the last board meeting than St. Charles West.
Yeah.
Could those be, I haven't looked, I could while we're sitting here. We also had a long break during that time. And so were those kids exposed to each other? Just right? Maybe it had nothing to do with being at school and they were all, I don't even know if they're friends. There's a lot more than just, is school environment causing cases, or is it other things?
Well, I'm not, I guess I am confused about our threshold. Does that kick in on just that one instance, and then, or does it have to be maintained for so many days at a rate about 4%, and then we have to?
I think we would reevaluate it at the next board meeting, but that was my understanding.
Okay.
My understanding is that you all said that I had the ability
That's
to
right.
go ahead and call it.
Exactly.
And then my feeling is it would be something we would look at, because we're doing this every 30 days.
Right.
Yeah.
We would come back to the drawing board when we came back. And to your point, going from 4 to 3, I don't think it's going to hurt anything, and it could help us. It could be a little bit better of a threshold than 4. I don't know if we want to get into 2 and 1 at this point, but I certainly think going up, that's my opinion, but I think it's a good point that you brought up. So I wrote down, I think So then we need to decide on the mask, the quarantine, and also the threshold.
Maybe we could decide, can we just eliminate one of these while we're going? Do you want to finish up with the threshold question? And then we can move on to the other two? Do we have some other thoughts about, do we want to keep the threshold as it is, or do we want to change it?
My thinking is that the threshold now is so high that it's not like having a threshold, you know?
So you'd like to make it 3%?
Yeah.
Okay.
And don't, I just said 3. If you want to go 2, you can vote it. I just,
Any other? So we have a discussion right now of perhaps changing the threshold from 4 to at least lowering it to 3. Yeah, if we want to
masks,
discuss,
For math.
in order to, for Jason to,
so it's for masks, not the quarantine piece, but for masks. So if right now it's just 2 high schools, the 2 schools. So one high, we're talking about individual schools. If they got to, instead of 4%, it would be 3% of the population, positive cases.
Positive.
I would be able to say, we're back in mass until the next meeting.
Are you talking just high schools too?
Yeah, that's
Because
Right now-
at, if you went to 2% at Lincoln, that would be
Well,
3 kids.
They don't, they're not optional right now.
Right, it's, that's what I'm saying, just
I
the
just said,
optional
I
schools.
it's just high schools at this point. Yes.
you're right now, yeah, you're right.
To that, to Julie's point,
Yes.
yeah, because it could be,
Yeah.
That's right.
That's a good point.
Okay, so are there any more discussions right now, though, on the threshold?
Yeah, why can't we just vote for mask optional for high school for 9 through 12 with that kill switch of 3%? And then that takes care of that.
Oh, yeah.
And then we vote
Yeah,
on
and then
that
we,
separate.
right.
Vote on that separate.
So do you want to make that motion?
Sure. I move that mask be optional for the high schools, 9 through 12, with the allowance that the superintendent can change the policy with a 3% threshold.
I second.
Okay.
Okay.
Did
All
you
those
get
in-
that, Kelly? Kind of made that up as I went along.
Okay, all of those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. So we have decided now with our 9 through 12 students. So now we're looking at, do you want to take them 7 and 8, and then kindergarten through 6, or do you?
We should consider 7 and 8. What are the positive cases since our last meeting, Julie, at Hardin? Okay, so on last board meeting, we had 12 cumulative cases. And then currently there's 16, so over the course of a month. Out of
Looking at numbers right now, Hardin is sitting at 693 students in person, and that 3% positivity rate would be 20.79, so 21 students.
And we've had 16 to date total, or you said yes.
and they just had another case today.
That one's in there, I get that. There's a couple quarantines that aren't in there yet, because they just gave you the positive case, but they didn't give you the.
Julie's done a great job of keeping up with this.
So 7th through 8th grade, they're eligible for the shot, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all along.
That would be my thought, is, I know we've talked about there's a space issue at Hardin, they don't. At Hardin, that there's not as much space to spread out, but they've had the same amount of time as our high school population to be vaccinated.
I would just keep in mind, I'm certainly not trying to sway you either way, but you're talking about a different age group than the 9 through 12, and you're a week and 2 days away from Thanksgiving and then a break. And then it's just 3 weeks and we're off again for 2 weeks. I don't know what that's gonna look like. And if we change them quickly now and then we're gonna have a break and a break, I just don't know what that looks like. I think coming back and looking at it in January would be the safer bet, but that doesn't mean you can't do it. I think we just be very careful with that, because that's a different age group. And they are, there's just not a lot of space to spread them out there.
And I will say, based on kind of what I'm looking at on the spreadsheet, it looks like there's been one quarantined kid that then became positive out of all their quarantines. The other ones, it doesn't specifically say, but so far I've only seen one that went from quarantine to positive.
For me, and we want to get all of them in as soon as we can, I think, into mask optionals. But we are so close to so many these breaks that are coming. And so many of now I'm really the K through 6th graders. But even our 7th and 8th grade students, they're still young, and some of them didn't, even though they might have had the opportunity, they may have hesitated and felt that they were kind of young. I'm still leaning toward safe rather than sorry, that just let's give it another month. Look at it at December, or maybe, or we can look at it December. We're going to do it every 30 days. I would say keep our mask mandate in place for us, kindergarten through 8th grade.
I think I understand your point. We have had, though, a 5-day weekend. Well, I guess, yeah, the 5-day weekend over Halloween and like parent-teacher conference, which you could take into account at Hardin. And there aren't extracurricular activities. And I would beg, like the 7th and 8th grade, they're less social, as far as they can't drive yet and those types of things. So I think it's just all things we have to consider if we're saying we're looking at the positivity rates and we're basing our decisions on that. I think we just have to at least consider. But I understand with breaks coming up that we have to take that into account.
And I guess the other thing we have no control over is while we can keep them safe in our school environment and mask, a lot of our, as Julie pointed out, a lot of our positivity cases are coming outside the school, and we can't control that.
Could we think about it in this respect? Okay, because there are a lot of things coming up, and like we're setting a threshold, okay? Couldn't we actually make a decision, and if the threshold gets busted before then, say when they come back from winter break, masks are optional in 7th and 8th grade? And that gives you time to still say, oh, wait, well, I don't know if we can do this because we're now at 5%.
Well, we're gonna have another conversation in December.
Right,
So.
but I'm just,
Yeah, we have to look at it every 30 days.
I know, but I'm just putting it out there as something to look forward to.
Well, that's kind of where I'm at. I don't want anybody to think, because I am not a pro-mask guy. I would like to get masks off our kids as fast as we can, to be honest with you. But we've come this far and we've done this well that it's like, I just think you have to be strategic about it. But we'll do, to your point, I would love to say in January, but I can't say that for sure because who knows what the numbers are going to look like. But that's our thought. Our thought process should be, when do we get masks off kids? That should be our thought process. Shouldn't be we should live in these things.
Right. Can I make
So to your point, I think
a statement, though, that's not going to make me very popular with some people listening? Okay, it's like, I sit on a board of education because I believe in education and I believe in science, and I've had my vaccines and I'm going to get a booster in that. And at some point, I think we're going to lose this battle because we can't keep fighting some people that refuse to get vaccinations. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And we're not going to mandate it. Just my 2 cents. Sorry.
So I'm just trying to kind of summarize where we are right now. We we have settled our high school, 9 through 12, optional masking and a lower threshold. And have we also addressed the state of play?
No, we're just at masking right now.
Okay.
We're just doing masking, so
Okay.
you're at 7th and 8th grade
Yeah.
right now.
So let's just make a motion either from one of you, either you decide. Do you want to make a motion first for 7th and 8th grade to go to mask or continue with a mask mandate and do we need the lower threshold? We don't need the lower threshold.
No.
Continue with a mask mandate. We can make that motion and vote it up or down. Or you can make the motion for 7th and 8th grade to go to optional with a lower threshold of 3%.
Well, I would stick my neck out and make a motion, if possible, to keep the current policy for 7 and 8 in effect until the next school board meeting.
What levels?
This is
7 and 8.
7 and 8.
Yeah.
To keep it as current, then why don't
Yeah.
we just say then, why can't we put the policy K through 8?
Okay. Yeah.
Well, that's good. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I broke it down because
Yeah.
I thought some of you
All
might
right.
want to look at it, but fine.
We can vote K through 8. Yeah.
And if that gets voted down, then we'll
Yeah,
discuss
yeah,
it
yeah,
further.
okay.
So the motion is that we continue the current mask mandate for K through 8.
Yeah. Yes.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. So we are going to maintain what we're doing as far as masking
Yeah.
until our next board meeting. And do we need to do something with the state of play?
Yeah, I want to talk to, I think, I want you guys, I appreciate the.
Thank you for coming in.
I appreciate the fact that you all have trusted me to make some of the decisions with the quarantining, and we've kept up with it. Obviously, everything I do, I go through you all with it. But since we're at a point now where we have a newest modification and we've got some of this test to stay play going, I just think we have to have a conversation. It doesn't have to be very long, but I think, and I put it out there, I want to really get your thoughts, your ideas, and probably your approval for moving forward with that. With that said, now that you're keeping mandated K through 8 and then 9, 12 being optional, I do think we've got our high schools where we've got a pretty good pocket of kids that are vaccinated, they're older, and we're just kind of, not that they're guinea pigs, but we're seeing how things are going with them. I feel like the test to play is a must. Test to stay, I feel like, is probably going to be, Julie, you correct me because you do a great job. You're getting an extra nurse in there. Our ADs are trying to help with test to play. I just think if we continue to stay with test to stay, it's going to get a little too, it could be really tedious and a lot of work for our nurses because they do a lot of nurses. Because here's what I want to say. At some point, our quarantines need to match K through 12 because it's hard because right now we're basically saying, and we know it's optional, but we're basically saying, hey, 9th through 12th grade, you basically get to say it and you're optional. K through 8, you're mandated, and if you're caught at lunch, you can't even come to school. That doesn't make sense to me. And I'm not saying let's rip it off the Band-Aid, but because you said K through 8's in a mask and we're controlled, I like to see us, let's see this new modification, meaning mask or no mask, they can come back and they have to wear it for 14 days. That way we can get our kids back at lunch because we're not seeing those kids come back positive that are exposed. And it basically ensures every kid comes to school and they're still a mask in a very controlled environment. High school level, we'll have to really watch it because now you're optional with letting them come back. And we also had a case already today or this week was test to stay, but I think we have to be careful with test to stay because I just don't know if it's going to be feasible for everything. But if you go that newest modification, you're basically guaranteeing that every kid stays in school. The reason why test to play has to stay is because all of those are modified quarantines. They can't do things after school. And I believe we have to have test to play in.
Yes.
So that's where I'm at. I'd say let's go, just if you're asking my opinion, let's try the new modification. I know that's going to ruffle some people's feathers. I think we can get through it. I think you're still got enough mandated policy in there with mitigation that I don't think we're going to see a rise. And we'll just have to see what happens at the high school level.
Can I ask a question? How many tests have been administered in test to stay?
But you have those
A
numbers?
ballpark.
I have the numbers of her total, and then looking at, I do have those
Well,
numbers.
Approximate
Yeah.
percent
Yeah.
of the positive ones.
She
Well,
can-
what it is if, and let me just kind of explain it kind of
Yeah.
briefly too. What it means for our school nurse, just the test to stay, is if you have a kiddo and he's positive, and then you have 10 contacts. Those contacts get tested the day that they get identified as a contact, plus 2 more times before day 7. So that means that in the course of a couple days, she's performing 30 tests on just that group of kids. Now, if another case pops up, then you may have another 30 kids on there. So what I've noticed in the previous few days, because we haven't been doing this very long, is that our nurse at High has been doing about maybe 10 a day. Now, when she gets a little help, that's one thing, but you also have to remember the tests itself take like 2 seconds to administer. The hardest part is before you can even do that, like you can leave, they can stay at school the day they're identified, but you can't test them until you get a parent signature. So then you're running down parents, trying to get them to sign these things, send them back in, and all of this. And in the course of all of this, we really, like we said, we've had one come back positive. It was weird because it was on a late, like the last day, like
the third test.
day 7. So I'm kind of like, did she even get that, or he or she get that from the exposure, or maybe she got it somewhere else?
We've also sent out the form, so a lot of parents are filling it out, so that helps.
Yeah.
My whole thing is at some point, we have to get more consistent with what we're doing with quarantine-wise for both. I know we got 2 different masks going on, but I know you're gonna hear from parents that my kid's in a mask all day, he goes to lunch for 15 minutes or 17 minutes, and then he can't come to school for 14 days because but our high school kids are in.
Yeah.
Now, saying that, you have a lot of options here. We could, since she is getting an extra nurse, you could do test to stay and play at the high school level 1 more month to see where it goes, keep everybody the same. You don't have, or you can go to the new one just for the high school. You could go test to stay for K through 8, but I think that would ruffle some feathers with our nurses, quite honestly, at K through 8. So there's a lot of combos you can do. You don't have to do, but it is.
Yeah, and the day we came back on a Monday where we ended up with 5 kids that were positive.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
No, it was the week before. Because that was the first time we had heard about test to stay and play. And we thought, could we start this now? At that point, we only had 1 more day of school. We had 105 kids out on quarantine. There's no possible way that our nurse could. So it could get to the point where it's not even feasible.
That's a great point. Because when it first went out with those 5, they would, but we don't know if all 105 would have been tested because some would have been vaccinated.
Right.
But
it could have been.
Some of them had
She
masks
still has
on.
to do all the work to figure
But
it out.
again,
And if they don't have, we're just saying like if they were exposed at school and they don't have symptoms. Now, we may need to have them do a symptom checker every day or something like that. But like if they don't have symptoms, just allowing them to stay in school with masked up.
I talked to Mr. Walker today. He's already thinking about, I wanted to see kind of what their thoughts were. And he really thinks that new modification can work, but they're going to come up with a system in the Google form that will help them with, okay, who really needs to be in a mask and monitor that looks like. Not that this is the #1 priority, but we don't want to add more work to our administrators or more work to our nurses. And when you get into this, test to stay and then do this to do that, who's in a mask, I mean, there's just so many things that they can start having to worry about that it just makes it gets crazier, and it's gotten crazier.
I don't know, I'm so confused.
So the question-
This
the
is like you're gonna have 20 nickels or 10 dimes?
So again, right now, in 9th through 12th grade, you are at test to stay and test to play. They don't have to go home, but they have to be tested. Now, if they don't want to be tested, we don't force them to, then they just go home.
Right.
The question is, do you want to keep both of them in play, or do you want to go to the new modification? I don't think we're going to go backwards. I don't think we're going to put more restraints. Do you want to put the new modification in play from 9th through 12th grade? That's your first question.
Okay.
And do you
Does that
fully
help?
understand,
Yes.
like, the test to stay and play? Okay, so like, because the test to stay is the 3 times within 7 days, the test to play is adding a test every day that they practice that sport. Now, that's MISHA.
Or play.
So right now, they
Yeah.
could get tested like 14 times possibly, if they got, the first day. If you go to what Dr. Seifert's saying, where we just let them stay in school without symptoms if they're a contact, then basically the test to play, is the only one we would use. That means the only testing they we can't supersede or do anything different with this because this is MISHA. They would just need to not have symptoms, and they would be testing just on the days that they would be playing their
That's a
sport.
great clarification.
That helps. I mean, that.
Yeah.
Because the
Just-
test to stay is 3 tests. Test to play is, and we would do this, we have to do it, the test to play. They have to be tested every day they're even going to practice or a game.
Yeah. So those will still have to stay in play if they want to stay at school, but again, or if they want to stay in their sport. But again, they're not eligible for that if they were exposed at home. They're only eligible for that if they were exposed at school.
So if they're exposed outside of school,
It
and you
doesn't-
said most of our cases are coming from outside of school.
I didn't say, I just said,
Yeah. So this won't even be a factor. If a,
It's a factor because we have enough exposed.
okay.
They're getting exposed at school. The cases are coming outside of
Yes.
school. It's
But
the
the
cases that
contact-
come,
But
they'll
they
come
bring-
to school,
And then
they're-
they expose the other,
Yes.
yes.
and that's where it's coming from.
Okay.
And we thought we had to do stay and play together initially because we didn't want people to think, oh, they're just catering. But I'm not bashful to say it. If you want to have any kind of play season, band season, winter sports season, and really give us a chance to stay in, you got to do test to play. I think there's a lot of things you can do. Test to stay, go to this new modification. And again, I said, I don't know if we want to go backwards. I don't know if it's so much backwards, but you can say, because the 9th through 12th grade can be vaccinated and they can wear a mask. If you wear a mask, you stay in school. So you can say that too. But then you have the test to play. And then you might hear, oh, you're kind of catering. So there's just a lot there you can do. So honestly, your question is, no, I'm serious. It's because this is how crazy it gets. But I want you to understand the details and how much there's a lot of difference of play just with quarantine. So you have test to play. I think you guys know that. I think we need to keep that. Do you want test to stay, or do you want the newest modification that says it doesn't matter if you have a mask on, or do you want to go back to you have to have a mask to be able to stay in? That's the bottom line. What's wrong?
I think that was, the way you said that, I don't know if they would have to wear a mask the 14 days after their case, though.
On all these.
Yes,
That,
yes.
I'm talking the specific
When
piece.
they were exposed, it doesn't matter if they had a mask.
It seems to me that the newest quarantine is a very low-risk scenario because most kids who are a close contact don't end up developing COVID. That's my 2 cents.
From school, yeah.
You're right. But it could seem, to that point, you're right. It could seem to a teacher or to a family that has a kiddo in our school, it could seem, oh my gosh, they can just stay now and it's just wild, wild west. I mean, there is that side of it. But you're right. If you go off numbers and what the data we have, you're exactly right at this point.
And are we saying this kind of discussion about state of
Good
play
point.
is only with our mask optional population? It doesn't affect
Right.
our masks, our K through 8, or does?
Yeah, you're going to really muddy it here.
Yeah,
But if
that's
you-
why I'm saying
but
we're
if
only-
you get to, when we get to K through 8 for the mask we're a mask mandate for K through 8. There is a conversation that we need to have is, to her point, to Ellen's point, if you go to the newest modification, test to stay doesn't do anything for you, but the new modification could come into play, and you could save those kids that were exposed at lunch and keep them in.
So right now, we're looking at.
It's just 9th through 12th grade.
yeah,
9th through 12th grade. Do you want to keep test to stay and play, or just play? And then if you don't do the stay, it's either you have to have a mask on to be able to stay in school, or you don't have a mask on or not. with all of it, you have to have 14 days. I know you don't like how I say that, but that's,
So is there a motion?
how would you like to say it? How am I not saying it clear enough?
I don't know.
Is there a motion for our 9 through
I'm
12th
giving you trouble
grade
because you're giving me trouble.
students that we make a motion, I don't know, but that at our 9th through 12th grade students, we initiate the state of play latest quarantine mandate.
The latest one would be taking out the test to stay. We would just
Yeah.
utilize
Test to play.
the latest guidelines
Which takes out
and
the
test to
state.
play for sports.
Right.
I knew you had a way.
I was just trying to simplify it.
So the motion is to use the latest,
Right.
The newest modified quarantine with test to play.
Right, which means, in essence, the only kids that could not come to school are the ones that either have COVID, were exposed at home, or have symptoms. And the only kids that cannot play sports would be if they have COVID, if they were exposed at home, or if they don't test,
They don't
and have
test.
symptoms.
yeah.
So the only way that we could guarantee, just to be clear, the guarantee that you can play your sports and stay in school, no matter what, is if you're vaccinated
right.
and don't have symptoms.
Or you test to play.
Even if you're
I'm saying the
vaccinated,
only guaranteed way,
Oh,
because if you're exposed at home, the test to play doesn't even come in
there you go.
right.
I make a motion to adopt the new modified quarantine for grades 9 through 12, as well as test to play. Period.
I second that motion.
All right. All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed? All right, so we are going with the latest modification.
Thank you for clarifying, Julie. What'd you say?
I'm sorry.
Are we doing K to 8 then too, as far as the new?
All right. So
Julie.
we've finished with 9 through 12. Now we're looking at K through 8, which has mask mandate in place. So how does this,
So I'm going to let Julie say, because she says it clearer than I do. She said, thank you. She's like, let me have it.
okay.
Simplify. Take it from the special educator.
Julie,
Yes.
I'm going to put my
Okay.
mask on and just listen.
That if we utilize the same quarantine procedures, the latest quarantine, because we don't really need to worry about test to play, because there aren't the MISHA stuff. But if we wanted to keep kids, use the same quarantining procedures, basically the ones that are getting sent home now are the ones that get exposed at lunch, because that's the only time they're really taking off their mask. So what it would be is that those kids would not get sent home. They would get to stay at school as long as they keep their mask on and they're symptom-free. Well, MISHA is the one that does the test to play, and I don't think any of those like extracurricular activities, K through 8, are through MISHA.
It's actually a really good question.
So we would need to probably decide on our own.
But you're right, but MISHA does that. Julie just said it perfectly. That's MISHA for the high school sports and activities. This would be, we don't really have sanctioned sports, but we have activities and clubs, and I think at this point, they just wouldn't participate in that. But I don't think we would test for them to do that. I just think that's probably too much to do at this point. But they're basically guaranteed, because they're mask to mask K through 8, and now if they're exposed at lunch, they can stay, because they still wear a mask, unless they have symptoms, and you're guaranteed they basically stay in school.
Yes.
Unless they have symptoms.
So another question would be with before and after care through the YMCA at the schools. I know that previously was not included in the, type of thing. So if they're in the schools, would that qualify under
This,
the
according to the
modified?
health department, it is just that they can come to school activities. They're still quarantined outside of the school day. So they would not be allowed to do before and after care, from what I understand. And the piece of that would, especially with extracurriculars, would be like too, is that those kids have to be wearing a mask for 14 days. So those people in those programs would have no knowledge that they were a contact, right, and being quarantined. So I would think that they wouldn't be able to participate. That's just my thought on it. Right now, we do not, because the health department quarantines them outside of
So
school.
it would be the same thing. That's a good question, because
Yeah.
Right.
Wouldn't change.
And those people wouldn't know, like, they wouldn't have any, knowing that those kids need to be masked up, and they wouldn't have any knowledge of those kids being contacts. It would only be our schools that would have that
This-
knowledge.
If you go to this newest modification for K through 8, it'll be a big change for people. But they're not, clubs, activities that is still modified. They will not be able to do that. Just come to school and wear their mask.
So the latest modification is only going to be during the school day.
And basically what you're doing then
Allow them
is,
lunch.
you're basically putting your quarantine K through 12 the same, except for you have the test to play for the MISHA.
And that really isn't our decision to make, because the health department is the one that says that they are only allowed to come to school, that they're still quarantined outside of the school.
That's a great point. So the health department has made this call. What you're going to hear from some people is the state and CDC didn't make this call. Our health department made this call. So you'll hear that a little bit too, probably.
But they are actually on they are, after day 7 with the test, they're out, or after day 10 without a test and no symptoms. So it's not as long as it used to be with the whole 14 days.
And not that we're trying to do this, but you're really cutting down on a lot of testing. And our nurses have done a great job with testing. But they have a lot of other things to do as well.
All right, so I'm looking at Heidi, you're pretty good at making this motion.
Probably start with newest mod if you want to, modification. And unless you want to do something different.
I make a motion, we adopt the new modified quarantine for grades K through 8.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, so are we done with, have we done all of our?
So in summary, do you want to do the summary or do you want me to? Okay, will you help me if I? So 9th through 12th grade is optional masking with 3% threshold. We're also using the newest modification plus the test to play at 9 through 12. K through 8, we are still mandating masks. We're to the newest modification at K through 8 as well with quarantine.
Well,
So
it was, and we think it's complicated for the last.
how about those kids that are currently quarantined? Did they come back?
Well, Julie just opened the can of worms. Oh, we did this last time. This is very helpful. So my feeling is this starts Monday. That's very helpful because I get all the information out tomorrow. We'll get letters and emails and everything out tomorrow. So it starts Monday. Starting Monday is when it starts, so those kids would come back at that point, on Monday.
Just to clarify it, they're at home now, but their quarantine is supposed to go through next Friday, and they have no symptoms. They can come back to school?
No
Okay.
symptoms.
Okay. With a mask for the rest of their 14 days, as long as they don't have it.
Your K through 8 are already masked up, so.
Okay.
Okay? What is it? Danielle, would you like to say something to the group?
Another muddied water?
Is there something we said wrong?
Oh. So with the decisions we've made, you can work out whatever that little glitch. And the principals of that building will.
I think the thought is they eat lunch and they move on. I mean, I don't know. They're just saying at this part, this new modification is trusting what Ellen was saying, and the numbers are showing that these kids aren't getting, that they're not necessarily coming up positive. And if that's an issue, we'll have to look at it. It's a good point, it's great.
It is, and for instance, when we talked, we can figure this out in each building, but like Carrie Holt and I talked about this at the early childhood level, not that we're changing anything there, but if kids would come back and they need to be 6 feet apart because they're finishing they can come back to school or whatever, there's other places they could eat or sleep or things like that where they can spread out, like in a cafeteria or a gym or something like that. So we will figure it out logistically.
Well, to that
Yeah,
point,
so everybody's safe.
some of our schools have already done that. They're already 6 feet apart or under 15 minutes, so.
Okay, we're moving on to new business. Item 7.01, our Professional Development Day. A chance for those of you who did go to the professional development to just share some thoughts. I know I went, I think Ellen, you were there, and Heidi, were you? No.
Marita did.
Ellen, who else?
Marita.
And Marita and I.
I'm sure you all will say this too, but can I just throw it out? Kudos to Danielle and her team. I mean, it was top notch.
It was the kind of professional development day that I feel like I experience when I go down to the state, MSBA kind of, the keynote speaker, Dr. Mohammed. I really liked that guy. And I stayed for his second presentation.
Breakout session.
Yeah. I'm chatting right now.
Well, it's a discussion, so go ahead.
Well, I was going to let them start, but I liked how he emphasized, because the key thing here is, I think there's this big discussion about equity, and what is equity? And I liked how he really kind of said, equity just is really an opportunity for all. It isn't that we're going to change and rewrite our curriculums we adjust curriculums all the time, but it isn't a big shift of some kind. It's just opening up these opportunities for all and acknowledging the contributions that maybe haven't been noted in the past, that is providing more equity about how we look at our different subject areas. But I thought it was so well organized. Wow.
Thank you.
Great job. Ellen or Rita?
Well, we don't necessarily have a presentation prepared. We're happy to talk about the day. I mean, I can kind of give you a rundown of the day for people who weren't there, and I'm happy to listen to any comments or feedback or answer questions that you have. So.
Yeah, to clarify that, when we discussed that, Donna said, let's not do a presentation or a report. It was just for you all to share your thoughts and what you gained, and we can do the same thing as we were there. We were in the understanding it was just a quick discussion of kind of how the day went.
Yeah, and
So, if you want me to give a quick rundown, I can. Or, okay.
So, as you know, it's kind of a controversial issue in general in this country. And so I liked this presentation very much. It was very thought-provoking. And, I particularly like Cortázar's books when he talks about mindset and something like that. I like that. But my question was, what were we hoping to accomplish by having him here?
It's a really good question. We have, as you know, our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee that has worked over the last year. Thank you. We have our
I am. That was probably a good thing.
We have our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee that has worked now over the last year to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion issues within our community, within our district, how we can help adjust things in our district, in our curriculum, within our code of conduct, with professional development. How do we make sure that we are truly providing the best education for every child in our district? And so when we started that, and Rodney, Jason, Julie, Ellen, anybody who's been on the committee, feel free to chime in. We talked about professional development. We started with that committee last year we had probably 7 people attend the Solution Tree virtual summit on conversations beyond race. And we all came back and shared with the committee. We were able to share some video recordings from the sessions. Dr. Muhammad and Ken Williams, who was our other keynote presenter, both presented at that conference, and we saw them and we saw the power. And many of us have been to previous sessions with Dr. Anthony Muhammad, who talked on PLCs or RTI or other key initiatives that have been central to our work as a district. And so as we were thinking about how can we begin some of these conversations in ways that we knew would be thought-provoking and not controversial, right? They rose to the top because we've seen them. We knew what kind of quality they would bring to the discussion. And so we were hoping from those sessions to be able to open some eyes, to help people reflect and think, to walk away feeling empowered, and that also for our staff members and our students of color, that they feel seen and valued and heard, and know that we are all working together to create a school system that advocates truly for every single child. And so when I looked at the evaluation results from when we had him in during the summer to work with our administrators, those were some of the best evaluation results we've had. And when I looked from from November 1st, they were pretty awesome too. And we know that we had a lot of people who had picked other sessions to go to, heard him at the keynote, and switched. You know, and they went to his session because we traced them down. Okay, they didn't sign in here, but they did sign in here. Like we saw the migration of people wanting to stay in here. And from his session in particular, the first session was more around diversity and inclusion work. His second session was around PLCs. And the comments that came out of especially that PLC session were, we need him back and we need him for a full day. Like everybody needs to hear it. So it really was the beginning of the conversation. There's so much more work to be done. Rodney and Nicole Adams have started lean-in conversations where it's just an open forum for people in the district to kind of hop on a Zoom and have conversations. And we've had several of those now. And so really this is the beginning of the conversation of really taking a reflective look as a district of what are some of the policies, procedures, curriculum, professional development, the different things and the different opportunities that we do as a district. We need to take a step back and really look through different lenses to make sure that we're making strong decisions that better every single child that come to us. So I don't know if I answered the question.
Walking the talk.
Well, that's what I really was curious, is what kind of actions are we taking? For example, and I have to tell you that I thought he was very reflective, and I had to, I really thought about it, And, for example, he mentioned the one time, for example, many schools not getting beyond Algebra 2 or something like that, and then he came up with a course or something like that where he took certain elements of Algebra 2 to help people work. And I appreciate that. But what concerns me in my mind is that is he trying to say that every student should have a right to go to college? Does that make sense what I'm saying? Not every student should have that right. They can have the right to go, but if they're not qualified, then college is going to be our new high school. You know what I'm trying to say? And then what are we going to have? Super, super duper college?
I think what he's saying, though, is that by virtue of the zip code that you live in, or by virtue of the color of your skin, depending upon the places that you go to school, the access, the resources, those types of things, many impoverished areas have impoverished schools that may not have qualified teachers, that may not have those access to those upper level classes. The state of Missouri many years ago said children going through high school absolutely need to make it through Algebra 2 in order to do whatever they're going to do in life. Go to college, go to the workforce, whatever. Like the state of Missouri and the National Association for Teachers of Mathematics have said that for a really long time. But when you look at statistics and you look at impoverished areas and they don't have the same access, that creates a societal issue based upon where you live and potentially what the color of your skin is versus what you are capable of doing. And so I think that's the conversation he's trying to have, that we need to challenge ourselves to think beyond. I know in my tenure here, we've had lots of discussions about algebra and math curriculum, and maybe we should create classes that teach Algebra 1 over the course of 2 years for kids. Or maybe we should have this class that no matter what you do with that, they never get to Algebra 2. So even in our district, we have conversations that kind of get to the fringes of some of those things that we need to take a step back and be reflective about. I think that's what he's getting at. Not that we need to water down expectations or entrance criteria or anything like that, but rather we give all children the same access, the same experiences, the same ability and opportunity to get there and to have that rich learning and to have teachers believe in them and say, you know what? You do have a scientific mind. Like, have you ever thought about maybe going into the healthcare field? You know, in that first session, the piece that stuck with me was the picture, and I can't remember the doctor's name.
Of the woman?
The African-American doctor who is the only pediatric female neurosurgeon of color in the country. The only one. And she said it was I think it was a community college science teacher who took an interest in her and said, you know, you have this kind of mind. Have you ever thought about? And she said her biggest hurdle to becoming who she was and doing what she did was her belief in herself. And that's because of the people around us. And that's because of our teachers. And you want to talk about power of teachers and power of curriculum. We change lives by doing that. And so I don't know why I'm getting choked up, but I am. And it's because we need to make sure that all of our kids have access. All of them, no matter what.
Well, that's true, and that's, you know, I'm just
Yeah.
merely saying that not everybody is meant for college. And
Sure.
so not everyone, we should not feel that everybody is meant for college.
Sure.
Counselors should not be telling students that.
Sure, and
Yeah.
that's also why our district has invested highly in Lewis and Clark Career Center and building our vocational opportunities for students. And I don't know if it was last meeting or maybe I dreamt having this conversation about the beauty of and. You don't have to be only college bound. You can take vocational classes and still go to college. Like you can have both a very practical trade and skill that you can have as a hobby or as a life career and still go to college and expand your horizons there too. But you're right, like kids need to find their passion and we need to help them find something that they're going to love to do that also is going to pay them well and let them be successful people moving forward.
It's more of an opportunity, access, and connection with
Yes.
kids than it is, oh, we're telling kids they have to do this or that. The kids are gonna make up their own decisions too. We just wanna give them that access and be able to connect with all kids and give them opportunity. And the great thing about Dr. Muhammad as well, and you've done a great job of explaining it, is it's not, I hate to say not just about DEI, but he gets into connecting DEI or equity, diversity, inclusion with the actual RTI process and our PLC process and how we are trying to connect with kids. He brings all that together in one package, and that's why it's so, when you ask what's the why or what's the purpose behind him coming in is because he's bringing the access and that connection and the opportunities for kids within the process that we've said is a big rock for us, which is the RTI/P.
PBS.
RTI,
MTSS.
No.
PLC?
PLC again.
What acronym do you want? We'll just keep throwing them at you.
RTI, PLC. And the PLC, hold on, I know. I lost the brain while I'm back. PLC and RTI are basically the same thing. And so it's so powerful because that whole second message was about how all that interrelates together, and that's what was powerful about it. Then if you go to Ken Williams, who was he came to speak, and Ellen, you got to hear him, and I thought it was a great morning. I enjoyed being in there with him. And one of the biggest things I heard from Ken that he told our support staff, and he talks about equity and inclusion, diversity, and bringing people together, but he said, and he told me at the end of the whole day we worked together, he said, Jason, you've got it going on here. You know why? Because the sense of belonging trumps it all. And that's what Ken said. He goes, I can feel it when I walked in, I could tell that when you have a sense of belonging, and I could feel it in this district, that trumps it all. You can talk about equity, you can talk about race, you can talk about all those, but if people feel like they belong and you connect with them, that's adults and students, that surpasses it all, and I love to hear that. And he said, you got it. Keep working on it. That's my take.
And that's the way I feel about the school district, so that's why I asked, what are you trying to accomplish?
I think it allows, all of the participants, all of our teachers and staff that had a chance to hear that message, made them much more aware now of all the things we're going to be doing.
Well,
Rodney, you were going to add, I saw you pick up your mic.
Yeah. I think before I make my comments, I have to say I don't speak on behalf of all African Americans. I'm only going to speak on behalf of myself. But I think one is that diversity, equity, and inclusion is something that is all around us. It's not something that it's from away from us and we're learning about it. It's something that all of us are embedded in, whether we know it or not. And so what was so impactful about what Dr. Muhammad did was that he showed how it was embedded into the curricular piece and in teaching and learning, which is so important because when you're looking at standards and you're trying to determine what students have learned, we understand that doing that process faithfully is ensuring an equitable education. And so that in itself is powerful. So I think it wouldn't be a far stretch to say that if we didn't provide students with meaningful interventions based off standards that they're not mastering in a classroom, that's not ensuring equity, okay? So that's the first thing. I think the second thing that's really important to think about when we're talking about access is that the key point about access is that what it allows things to level out. If I never make it to the basketball court, I don't know how good I will be in playing basketball. But once I make it, maybe I'm not cut out for it. And I think that's really what it boils down to. I certainly wasn't a soccer player. Oh, no, I take that back. I wasn't definitely that. But I certainly wasn't a baseball player. But when I stepped on the field as a chubby fifth grader, I really realized I wasn't a baseball player, okay? And so I switched to basketball. And that became my game. But I had access to baseball. Okay, so I was never left to wonder, was that my sport or not? Because I played it, I tried it, and I didn't like it. And so is college for everyone? No, it's not. But what we would like to ensure is that all of our kids had the opportunity to tinker with the idea of college rather than not having access or the potential to have access or the potential to have people that look like them that's in college or that's a mentor or a community member that says you can do it. Now, what happens if someone says you can do it and provide you access? Now what was a fleeting thought is now a hope and a dream, you see? And so I think that's the important key. And sometimes we can go through our system so long where, and I just talked about this in my Maryville class that I teach, sometimes we have unconscious bias, and we all do. We're not oblivious to it. It doesn't matter if it's the affinity bias or the confirmation bias or the halo effect. We all have these unconscious bias. And what happens is as adults, sometimes they play on us and we don't even realize it. So taking something such as the RTI process or once you break down, taking something such as the PLC process and then the intervention piece is the RTI process. Well, if we're not giving kids meaningful interventions, then it's very possible that they're not getting access. And that's the name of the game. As long as you show me that, as long as you give me the opportunity and believe in me, then maybe I'll determine if it's for me or not.
And I think that's when I heard, Daniel, you said, well, I've been hearing this, but that access piece, the PLC and letting all teachers get this message from Dr. Muhammad about the opportunity, or having someone, a teacher, who will just make that connection to say, have you thought about, this? Or just opening up doors, letting them see if, well, I'm repeating, but I think that's the key thing from at least the November, aren't I? I'm on? Oh. Anyway, I think that the beauty of November 1st, with the time that all the teachers and staff had an opportunity to hear that message, just reinforces the fact that we do have a district of teachers who are caring and will, I hope, continue to notice that child, just that one-to-one connection somewhere. Ellen, I kind of skipped. How about some thoughts?
I saw Ken Williams, and he didn't really get into equity. I had an appointment that I couldn't miss, and I left at lunchtime. He was talking about team functions, and he used clips from 12 Angry Men to illustrate his points.
And you felt it was
Oh, yeah.
the day was worthwhile.
And what was great about him in that session, that's not what he had planned on doing in that session.
Oh.
But again, we had staff who heard him and came, where originally we didn't have as many support staff coming to that session. It was going to be geared more for administrators and teaching staff. And so what he had planned, he didn't know if it would resonate with who was in the audience, and he flipped on a dime to kind of engage people, and it was really interesting. I sat at the table with a couple of our skilled maintenance guys, and we had some really in-depth conversations about dissecting that movie that we would have never had that kind of conversation. It was amazing.
You're exactly right, and I was with Ellen. I don't know if you would say that about our conversations. Did I? That was what's funny. But
we were going, they were going philosophical.
I
was like,
don't know
whoa.
if I'm that philosophical, right, Ellen? But to the point of is that whole process did talk about, so you're talking about team dynamics, but that did talk about how we receive people and work with people, and equity does come into play, and diversity and inclusion comes into play. It wrapped right into it, and he did a great job. And then the second half of the day was pretty much the CO team and a couple of different, the principal and a couple of teachers, and he unpacked, again, some of the RTI, PLC processes and really talked about our why. And so a lot of things that he talked about reinforced the things that we're already doing. And the cool thing about Ken was, it was just, let's just make sure everybody remembers, Friday was just for support staff, Monday was just for certified, and I thought that was genius on Danielle's part to do that. We could just focus, and Ken came in, it was just awesome. His keynote to everybody was just celebrate the support staff. It was just awesome to see. And that sense of belonging trumps everything was resonated with me. And then he really got into team dynamics and then really got into some nitty-gritty things as a leadership group at the end of the day. Then when you get to the certified staff, yes, Dr. Muhammad was there. He did his thing, which again, he brings DEI in right into the RTI PLC process. The thing is there were so many other things that people could go listen to and see. And the great thing is everything is connected to our two big rocks. Either RTI process, you get a lot of that. Ellen, you came and heard a whole session on RTI process at the high school level, which was great. And then there's a lot of student needs things as well. Social emotional learning and cultural responsive teaching. And so it's not just, just go do this, go do that, bring this person in. It's all connected to our two big rocks. And that's what's awesome to see.
And so over the 2 days, just as a quick synopsis, we had just under 1,000 people during the 2 days, a little over 100 sessions that people were able to choose from. And all in all, the evaluations were very positive. We did find with support staff, they had a few technology sessions that were virtual because the group that we typically go with isn't traveling yet. And we learned our lesson again, virtual is not the way to go. So we will not be doing virtual sessions ever again for PD if we can avoid it. But we also asked them, what else would you like to see? Like next year, what else would you like? We did see a lot of the sessions that we had. They asked, like, this was amazing, bring it back. This was amazing, we'd love to have a full day. This was amazing, please do this. They also gave us some things to think about, and support staff and certified staff alike, they would also like to have more detailed, specific sessions that pertain to them. So our staff that work as school secretaries would like things that pertain to school secretaries instead of just office staff, right? Or, you know, the registrars might need things that are different from our finance staff here in the buildings or the finance staff at the schools. So, and the same thing with some of our teachers, like being able to break it down even further for like our career technical teachers at Lewis and Clark, or our alternative ed teachers, or our specialty content areas that maybe there's only a couple of the teachers in the district, you know, who teach that kind of thing. So we're going to work starting right away. We had a meeting today with the DPDC after school to kind of debrief too, and so that's going to be our next step, is already jump starting into planning for next year and how can we provide more customized options. But all in all, the feedback was really good. People seemed to have a good day. On the support staff day, I was going out to my car, so this was later, at St. Charles West, and I couldn't quite see the person, but literally they were going out to turn off onto Zumbel at the light and rolled down their window and yelled at me across the parking lot, "Dr. Tormala, that was the best PD we've ever had." And I'm like, okay, thank you. You know, but that was the support staff day, right? Like, so I think that it went really well. And I think I also have to give shout outs to some of our community too that loved on our staff. So We Love St. Charles knocked it out of the park. They brought so many grandma's cookies. Like, I've never seen that many. I'm pretty sure grandma's cookies was pulling all-nighters, like to pump out cookies. Like, they loved on us. Chartwell's fed us, and like just a lot of good support for our teachers and staff. And I think people felt it those days. So
Then that's a great day.
Thank you.
Okay, 7.02, our bond projects. Charles, I bet that's you.
Yes. This month, you only have one project. Before we get to that, I'll just tell you we have a couple more in the pipeline. One will arrive in December, which is Monroe's HVAC project. Another, and Monroe is a fairly complicated project, as we've told you before, because it's going to have to be built over 2 summers. And the architects and engineers further asked us to pull out a third piece to that project, being the HVAC, because of the long lead times. So we're going to bid that early. And then Success will follow pretty quickly, but that'll be a January board meeting item for you to consider at that point. So the one you have in there tonight is for lighting replacement at the buildings that we have not yet accomplished that in, with the exception of Success and Monroe, because they'll get it as they get their big interior renovations. And so you see there is a recommendation letter from our mechanical engineer, Chris Jordan of FSG, as well as the bid doc that shows you how the bids came in. KB is clearly the low bidder, with a overall project cost, if we take bid 1 into, which is our recommendation, of $1,897,000. And we would request that you approve that bid. This is one of those projects, we aren't waiting till next summer because the lighting contractors will work second shift. So we should see this project begin probably even before Christmas if they can get the parts. Our current project that is covering Benton, Knoll, St. Charles High, and Hardin, we're still waiting on some fixtures, specifically in this building. All these wall sconces, there are about 80 of them in this building, and those are a special order item that are all delayed. So we have a few things like that that are delaying the current project, and so we want to get this one awarded and tell them to move forward so that hopefully we can see progress even before Christmas.
Okay,
May I make a motion?
yes.
I move to approve, to accept the bid from KB Electric as presented.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Item 7.03, our proposed calendar revision.
That is me. So quickly, we humbly come to you and want to basically ask for your approval once again to give the SCSD staff, students, this is the why, to give the SCSD staff, students, and families 2 days to focus on their own mental and physical well-being. And also the other part is to revise our calendar for the betterment of our students and staff. So the plan, Chris, can you go to that, please, and go to the second slide? So if you recall, we did this last year. We didn't call it a fancy title last year, but several districts have come up with the title Mental Health Day. So we're looking at asking again for the 20th and the 21st, which would be that Monday and Tuesday before winter break, to be used as mental health days. That means that December 7th would become the last day before winter break. Whatever is planned for that day on the last day. Chris, can you scroll down? Thank you. December 17th would be that Friday, so there's an early release for K through 8. Whatever was originally scheduled for the 21st, we would do on the 17th. This change would give the SCSD community a much needed full 2 weeks and then 3 weekends off for rest and rejuvenation during the winter break. We understand that we can't ask for this every year. We understand that. But I also think we're still in a pandemic. There's a lot going on. We've seen a lot of behaviors. We've seen, obviously, I mentioned a lot of things happening at schools. Great things are happening as well. We believe learning and growth is happening. But there's a lot going on for people, for big people and little people. And so slide 4, again, other districts are doing the same. Some of them are taking the 2 days of Thanksgiving. That was a question that came up for us. A couple things there. One, December gives, actually it says we believe taking the 2 days at winter break is better. Here's the following reasons. One is more time for families to plan for the 2 days. If we do it now, it's just a day and two. And this does affect some families because it's 2 more days of daycare. Last year, but a lot of them was very positive for our staff and our families last year as well. Last year's plan worked so well, and the full 2 weeks at winter break really helped us propel us into the second half of the year. And how are we able to do this? We are able to absorb the 2 days in our regular calendar, meaning we won't have to extend the school year into June because we have extra instructional hours already embedded in our calendar. Again, I don't think we want to get into this is something we do every year, but we're certainly still in a pandemic. So then a side note on slide 5, I just wanted to make sure you already know this information, but I just want to make sure people understand. We obviously had to cancel school twice at Hardin Middle School. Obviously one for a power outage and the other one was a threat. Our plan is to absorb those 2 days as well in our regular schedule, meaning we won't extend the school year. And just remember, our staff actually worked the power outage. They stayed in school that day. And on the threat day, they did not. But again, I tend to believe that wasn't a great off day for anybody because we had a lot of traumatic experiences going on. And we actually did meet in the afternoon with the staff virtually that day as well. So that was not certainly a day off for our staff. we believe we can absorb those days as well. Now, saying that, if we can't for some reason, we would still try to absorb it by basically taking an ADA hit. We don't certainly think that is what we want to do, but that would not be a huge cost if we had to do that. But I just want to make sure you knew that. We believe this is the most appropriate plan for Hardin Middle School. That staff actually worked again the power outage day, and then the threat was a very traumatic time for all involved. So we humbly ask. This is your gift. This is you to give and you guys knew this is ahead of time, so I'm not springing on you this evening. But you were so gracious last year. We just thank you for all that you do for our staff. When we're asking again for the 2 days to make a 2-week break at winter break.
Would you mind just, I think, for the sake of the public and for me to know what I'm voting for, can you give me examples of why the teachers are so stressed out, or the staff is so stressed out, so I could get an understanding of what I'm voting for?
Would anybody in the room like to add or like to talk about
Brendan,
how? Seriously, because I'll say it, but Brendan. Well, actually, we have secondary, elementary. We have office clerk in the room as well.
And what about, we've already talked about the nurses and all of
Look,
that.
they're already standing up.
Yeah.
So, and I don't, first of all, let me say this. I think your point is clear and we can have that conversation, but I want you to hear from the people in the room. That would be great.
Yeah, okay. Sure.
Thank you for hearing from me again. I can speak as a secondary teacher. Working at Success Campus, where we have a lot of high trauma students, a lot of our kids are really struggling. Coming back to in-person learning has been a challenge for a lot of them. Behaviors have been above and beyond what they typically are, even in our building where we're kind of accustomed to a lot of behavioral challenges. I can also speak just as union president, a lot from my fellow secondary teachers are just stresses of having kind of everybody back in the building. I know in the larger buildings they're having behavioral problems as well in readjusting, and it has been a challenging year because I feel like this year when I've talked to staffers, administrators, it feels like we are kind of adjusting. We have the COVID situation still going on at present, but we are also starting to see kind of old familiar problems that we had pre-COVID and issues and challenges that us and every school district faces coming back as well. And so kind of the combination of the two of those has been very heavy on our staff this year. As in speaking as union president, I've talked to a lot of our elementary reps as well, and I would say they are as stressed out as I have ever seen the elementary folks in my time being in charge. So that's, I mean, where I feel like we're at. I know people in my building are really feeling it right now, and those 2 extra days would really be an immense help for us, and I think bring us back for a stronger spring semester and hopefully a gradual return to normalcy.
Thank you.
Brendan, your mic wasn't on.
For asking this question. I would just say from an elementary perspective, students and staff and parents, I think we're all at a place where last year we thought this will be over soon. And just not being able to see the light at the end of the tunnel has just put a lot of stress on everybody. Things that we would normally have been able to deal with, no problem, are just everyone's window of tolerance has just gotten smaller. And so everything that's new, everything that's challenging just creates a lot of stress. One of the workshops that I went to at our professional development day was from a counselor, and she was talking about how COVID has put chronic stress on us that we are not meant to carry for the amount of time that we have. So I know our MST members, our elementary teachers would really appreciate these extra 2 days. So thank you.
Thank you.
So, I support what they said.
So,
And I would add just two things based upon what they've said too. So looking at the questions about PD and what would you like more of, mental health, trauma, meeting the needs, all of those things rose to the top. And we had more like mental health type sessions this time than we've ever had before. So that definitely is a need that teachers and staff across the board are expressing. But just as a reminder, just to put it back in perspective, so when we talk about our second grade students, when you say, when was their last year of normal schooling? The answer is never.
Never, right.
Right? When we talk about our ninth grade high school students, when was their last year of normal schooling? It was sixth grade. So when you put those things in perspective, we're still asking everybody to get the kids exactly where they need to be. But we have a lot of hurdles and a lot of chronic stress and a lot of other compounding factors where, like, I think what Lauren said it best, like people's window for tolerance, it's not there like it normally is.
Well, and the lack of subs and support staff, paraprofessionals.
Yeah. Teachers are just picking up the slack in all areas, because that's what teachers do, and they used to be able to do it. But I think I'm saying again, you're right, Lauren. It's suddenly that constant stress. It's still wearing down.
And adding to what Danielle said, I mean, it's not only just on a learning, okay, a sixth grader, okay, or let's say they're eighth grade, okay, and last time they were in school was fifth or sixth grade. It's a social thing too, just getting them back to their socialization skills. I mean, still they're working with a mentality of, well, this is how I was last time I was in school.
Yeah.
well, I appreciate Lauren and Brendan saying something, and I didn't hear for us, or that we can't handle it, or that we're different than everybody else. Look across society, everybody's struggling. And I would like to be able to help our families and our parents, but our parents don't work for us. Our staff does. And if we don't take care, and I just, for me, as a superintendent, I always try to take care of our staff the best we can. But they might not always love every decision we make or be perfect with it, right, guys? But I think one thing that I take pride in is that it's all about our students, right? It's all about our students, but you gotta take care of your staff as well. And we believe, yes, this could be a little hardship for some of our families looking for 2 days of daycare. I get that. I want to put that out there. But I know what it did last year for us. I heard so many good reports that 2 full weeks really, really helped us propel us, as Brennan said, into the second semester. And in some degree, not that it's poor us, but we're facing more challenges now than we did last year.
Can I make a motion? I move to approve the proposed calendar revision as presented.
Have a second?
I second.
All right, all of those in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed? That calendar revision passes.
Thank you so much.
Good, deservedly so. My drum roll.
So this is as long or short as you want to make it, board.
That's interactive.
Yeah, that's,
So just a
is that a
couple,
threat?
before I get to the board financial report. Open enrollment has gone really well. It ends on Monday. I've been to every building and every department to talk about any questions people have. Really, really good questions. Some of them are very, very individual. Some of them apply broadly. So for those of you who are teachers, have been teachers, consider yourselves teachers, you can imagine my presentation today at Hardin, building number 15, was much better than my presentation way back 2 weeks ago at whatever the first building was. But I don't think I did a bad job. I think I've just improved because I kind of know where we're going. But that's gone really well. You'll also notice the ASBR is in the financial report for you. And really the only thing that I would want to point out there to you two things. One, the ASBR is always a postmortem from the previous year, so this is a snapshot of the district as of June 30. And then number two, you probably notice that we always look at that percentage that we have in operating reserve. And so we actually went up slightly, and that's after a year where we were really, and I was leading the charge, really, really nervous about where we were going financially. So that is both, I guess, a black mark on my ability to forecast the future, but really is a credit that the state of Missouri finally did pay us what we were going to be owed on the foundation formula, that the economy in St. Charles rebound, and so we really were able to come through the pandemic financially in fairly good shape. And if you notice, we're up about 1%. 1% in our budget is, give or take, about $850,000. If you look at line 5424 in revenues, that is $876,000 we received in the first round of CARES Act money from the federal government. So there's about 1% difference. So if you want to say, is there one thing, it's not just a single one thing, but that's a 1% difference that probably pointed to all the other factors being reasonably equal to where we thought we would be. So that's the long and short on the ASBR. Now, the thing that, again, might either generate a lot or very little discussion that I also put in there is something that Donna saw and then called me about because she thought maybe I'd put it in the wrong spot, I think. There's a recommendation from a company called AB Creative for some playground equipment. That would not normally be in my financial report, but I just, it's there after discussion with Jason and the CO team about what we need to do with the playground that is just to the north of where we're sitting right now. Benton Elementary is probably as long as any other building in the district. The playground that is there has been there well longer than any other playground we currently let kids onto, and features things like, you know, the hot metal slide that can burn you on the way down and sharp edges on equipment. And so Josh Schaefer's been after me to let him take it out. I think that that is one possibility. The other one is we replace it with a little bit of equipment. Replacing it with a little bit of equipment might be appreciated by our near neighbors because we do have kids that use what's there now. Those of us that work in the building can tell you that Ellen and lots of folks bring their dogs by or walk their laps or bring their kids out, so it does get a lot of use. But we thought it maybe needed, we wanted to hear at least a consensus from the board before we spent $40,000 on playground equipment for a building where we have no students. So your thoughts are certainly welcome. I can argue both ways on this one.
So thoughts on the playground equipment. I mean, I for one look at that area almost as a little central park for a central location, and I would think it would be well appreciated and not only well used but look attractive too to make that a playground area. So I think that looks fine.
I agree with Donna.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
I agree with you.
Oh.
Just FYI, I mean, the other question that might be in some of your minds is, well, what are we doing for the other buildings? And so, you know, we're still waiting on the Lincoln Playground, which you all approved as part of our bond issue projects to replace. We've added a significant piece at Coverdell. We rebuilt the Blackhurst Playground after renovations there. We've worked with PTO on some changes there. Our PTO is very active. And so really the only building that we haven't done a lot of playground work at in the last 3 or 4 years is Null, and she's on the list. We just haven't gotten there. So we really are trying to take care of those playgrounds that are active places. The same, we've replaced a couple of pieces we haven't added, but we're getting ready to hopefully in the next year, year and a half, bring a proposal to expand some of the area that Jefferson has to play that would also be accessed by Monroe and do some upgrades on that campus as well.
Well, the motion is all under one financial report, so.
I don't really need your opinion. I just wanted to like gauge, I mean, is there anybody that's terribly opposed to us doing it, I guess, is Marita. If you'd like to, as a board, ask me to, you can pull it off and vote on it separately, or we can just do a consensus. But either way is perfectly fine with me.
Do we have a consensus to go, improve that playground area?
No.
No? Then let's take that out and make it a separate motion. I'm going to start with, no.
Very good.
Do I have a motion to remove the what I consider hazardous playground equipment and put in a few new pieces?
I tell you, in either way, we probably are going to take it out,
Yeah.
one way or the other. We
Right.
need to take it out.
Yeah.
So
or
there's
else
some
it's a
cost
big
there to take it out.
liability.
Yeah.
So is there a motion to remove the playground, is there a motion to make that area with some new playground equipment?
I make that motion.
Is there a
Put
second?
Second.
Okay. Do you want a roll call vote, or do you want to just vote it?
No, just regular.
Okay, all those in favor of improving that play area as proposed, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
The motion carries that we'll go ahead and do something with that area. Are there some thoughts and discussion on the remainder of the financial report?
I do have two other sheets that I'd like to show you, and one is a sheet that did not attach today. Emailed it to me when she realized that it was not in there. So Chris is going to pull them up behind you. It's the two, Chris, that have the highlighted corner. There's month end. This is the old style that we used to see regularly.
I love that old style.
And so, I asked Lavinia specifically to do this for us this month, and then she realized we got month but not year. So this is beginning balance for the month of October, and you can see we're ending the month. This sheet shows 18 million, but I want to specifically call out Fund 4. Fund 4 is affecting that balance negatively to the tune of about 4.6 million, but we really have bond dollars that are paying for all of that out of Fund 4. So we really are not as far down as 18.1. But it's the stereotypical fall for us, where we are receiving local or very little local revenue. We're receiving our state revenues, but by the middle of December, we'll start receiving local tax revenue, and you'll see our balances begin to go back up. If you look at that next sheet, Chris, if you could pull that one up for me. Yeah, there you go. That one, please. If you can make it a little bigger, it would help me at least. You can see on the year end, that starts with $40 million, and we're at that 18,136 with that, negative in Fund 4, erroneously affecting the bottom line. So otherwise, you can see we've got almost no county revenue, but that's not unusual. We should get fines and forfeitures anytime, which fines and forfeitures continues to drop. So again, I'd encourage you to speed on your way home if possible. If you watch Highway 70, you would think we'd be going up, but not so much. And then state revenue is holding in where it should be. Federal revenue, as I think most of you are aware, but I'll repeat it in case you have forgotten or didn't know, we draw it down in arrears. So we have to spend the money, and then we can request the money. And so we still, we're in the process with Nidra Woolfolk, our federal programs specialist, of requesting our first drawdown from ESSER 2. But that's not reflected here yet. But we're going to pay for summer school and our bipolar ionization project. And so you'll see that, so it'll be a big jump. Federal revenue doesn't come in evenly. The state comes fairly evenly all year. Questions?
So you're saying also that projected
Yes,
ending balance is going to be going down once we...
That's right about where the ASBR is that you've got. So that would be about holding steady. Now that is, I'd say at this point of the year, a guesstimate.
Okay. Is there any discussion with the financial or questions for Charles? Okay. Is there,
Thank you, Charles.
Well, and, I know that we have struggled to get you the detail that you've become accustomed to and we would like to provide. And so making no excuses for anyone, we have just really struggled with some staff changes and software changes. And so we're going to get you back to normal. But I apologize for that. And thank you for holding this.
I love that page.
It makes it pretty easy.
It does.
Yeah.
It is.
Sometimes you just need that page, Carol.
Yeah, I'm happy. Just give me the.
I
Just tell us about it and show me that page.
That page is, what do you usually say that page is between Rita and her, or the board and the?
This is getting between Rita and her neck.
It is.
That's my favorite statement every meeting, sorry. I love that.
Do we have a motion to approve the financial report? Do I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, 9.01, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Do I have a second? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, we're adjourned.